Hey guys, this is Adam Chomsky, and I'm going to show you how to do a super long zoom in a time lapse. So first of all, the way I shot this is I shot two separate time lapses. This is in Grenoble, France, and I just set my DSLR up on a tripod with a wide angle lens and shot a time lapse from here every 4 seconds, 2 or 4 seconds, something like that. And then I actually changed lenses, and let me go back a photo. I changed to a telephoto lens and zoomed in on this area here, and then just shot another time lapse, just a static time lapse, just like that from this location. Okay, so that's how you shoot it. That's all there is to shooting it, really. And then I'm going to show you how to edit it in Adobe After Effects. So first I'm just going to import my series of images. This is from Grenoble, France. And if you just select one and it says JPEG sequence, should be automatically highlighted here if you're naming sequences just similar to how mine are here. And then open. I'm going to drag this onto a new composition button here. And I actually have all my images put together. They're all named the same before and after the jump here. So what I'm going to do is actually drag another layer down here, and at the point when I have this jump, I'm gonna trim this layer to just before the jump and this layer to just after the jump. Let's see, actually I want to go one more, I think. Okay, and then I'm gonna actually overlap these by, let's say, 4 frames. And I want to have the zoomed in one on top. Let me flip the order of these two. So the zoomed in one is on top. Okay, so now I'm just going to set the opacity here to 50%. Oops, undo. I accidentally set the scale. Opacity to 50%. And then I'm going to scale this down and move it over and try to line it up on the original image. Where am I here? Okay. Let me just, if you hold down the control button, you can adjust the scale more precisely. And I'm just trying to line this up. So it helps if I line up the center of the image, like this dot here, directly on top of that location on the original image. Let me turn this on and off so I can see where I'm at. Okay, so that's about right. So now when I adjust the scale, this dot stays in the same spot, and I can adjust the scale up and down until I get that approximately correct. And then I can adjust the rotation, control, click and drag to adjust the rotation. So it's not going to line up exactly, but that's about, I mean, that's close to as good as I can get it here. And that's probably about close enough. So now I'm going to set the opacity. I'm going to turn on the keyframes for the opacity. I'm going to set it to like 10%. And then go to the end here and set it to 100%. Okay, so what I have at this point is a time lapse. It's just ticking along like a normal time lapse. And then I have this image fading in here, and then the old one, the wide angle shot disappearing. So okay, so that's what I want my image to look like. So now all I need to do is go to Layer, New, Null Object. Okay, I'm going to take my pick whip here on my 2 layers and link them to the null object. Or you could also just pick it from the drop-down list here. It does the same thing as dragging the pick whip. So now with my null object, actually for 1 second let me turn this off, and I'm going to move my null object to make sure it's selected here. It's a little easier to work with if your null object is pretty much right over the area where you want to zoom in. So I'm going to move that approximately to where I want to zoom in. And then I'll set this again so that these are have the parent as the null object. All right, at this point, I want to go to the null object transform controls, and I'm going to go to the point where the wide angle image disappears and go back 5-6 frames, something like that. I'm going to set keyframes for the position and scale, and then I'm going to move forward back again to this point where the wide angle image disappears, and I'm going to zoom in enough so that this image fills the screen. And I can adjust my position and my zoom level till it fills the screen. Okay, so at this point, what I should have basically looks like this. Okay, so it's as a crash zoom, a fast crash zoom. That's the way this looks best, because as you zoom in, the image starts looking blurry. You start to see where these images overlap, and the background image starts looking blurry, and things start looking weird. So you want it to go pretty fast. It has to be like a crash zoom, so you won't really notice those things. And then you've got this nice transition from the super wide angle to a long telephoto lens view. Okay, so once you've got that, I like to just make another sub-composition by clicking on my composition, dragging it down to the new composition button, and then this new one I'm going to hit Control-K, and I'm going to set my resolution to 1920 by 1080, just a standard 1080p image, and my camera is like an 18 megapixels, so I find that about 38% or so, maybe a little more, will fill the screen. So now I've got the 1080p crop, and I can do other zooming here as well if I want. If I don't want this to be a totally static image, I could, for instance, do position and scale, and I could zoom in a little more and change it at the beginning to like a, start off kind of up in the sky and just have a slowly kind of drifting zooming in, and then a very quick crash zoom, and then from here I could do like a kind of zoom in even more and move it up the street, something like this. And let's see what that looks like. Just add a little bit of interest to the shot so it's not just a totally static shot. And if you want to mess around with the timing, if you think the crash zoom is a little too fast, you can always go back to your original composition and move these back a few keyframes and play around with how fast you want the crash zoom to be. Let's see what that looks like. See, that one's a little slower. It becomes a little more apparent that you're doing something weird, but I think that still looks pretty smooth. Unless you're really looking close, you won't notice this transition between the wide shot and the telephoto shot. You can even go a little further, see what that looks like. See, it becomes a little more apparent there when you zoom in. You might want to overlap these more than 3 frames and try to do a slower transition here if you wanted to do that. And there you have it. That's the simple way to do it. Thanks for watching.